everybody. Thanks for coming out to the work session. We've got a written briefing on the funding our future sales tax increase and general obligation bond. Is there any questions, council member comments we need to dig into, or can we move on? I'll take your silence to mean we're moving on to item 2 on our agenda, the previous year's legislative intents and interim study items. We've got the wonderful Allison Rowland, very capable of telling us about all the legislative intents that we have issued over time and eternity and the status of many of them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can actually only speak to the one since fiscal year 2015.
That's good enough.
That may seem like an eternity ago, but that's all we have here. The idea here is really just to ask whether the council will confirm the staff recommendations or have a better idea or different preference from the status changes that we propose in this document. So our idea, for the purposes of time, was not to go through each item, but rather focus on where council members have questions. Okay. The 3 options we recommend are either, depending on how a department may have responded to the questions, are to leave an item open or to close an item. And in the close category, we have close and continue or close and complete. So those are the 3 options we've suggested. There are several suggestions for potential straw polls going through the document, but really we're open to your suggestions, asking for some guidance here. And most of the department chairs were able to be here, department directors were able to be here so that they can respond to any questions you may have as well.
Great. Council members, I'm not sure if you have specific ones. I'd like to just read the short title of these, and then if there's, you can look at the staff status assessment and speak up if you want to amend what's written here in our staff report or endorse it. So the first one is the Golf Enterprise Fund assessment to consider closing it. And I do like the staff's suggestion that we ask the administration to provide additional information about why it opted not to pursue an RFP for management of the golf system. What do you all think about that? Councilmember Kitchen.
I'd like to know. So I support that.
I think in this budget discussion, there's been a lot of dialogue that's made it clear we need to have more discussion around golf. So Allison, this consider closing is just the RFI component.
Right.
And allows us to pick up with the conclusion of the RFI. And
right. The original legislative intent referred specifically to asking the administration to do an RFP, and that was later amended by the council to an RFI. Okay. So as you know, the administration did complete that process, but some council members have expressed interest in getting a little more information, keeping in mind that the actual content of individual and responses as a group is confidential. But some council members have suggested that it might be good to have a little more information from the administration on the rationale behind their decision.
So do you need a straw poll for us to approve the suggested closure remaining open of these?
If it's apparent.
Okay, then we'll move on. More golf discussions to be had, and looks like we'll be closing the RFI legislative intent. Citywide IMS projects for constituent relationship management, the CRM and document management. Recommendation to close that one out. Anything, council? Okay. Thank you. C is the 6-month review for council added or identified items. I recommended close that. It's
essentially they were briefings requested that were held.
Great. Pretty straightforward. D, the plan for increasing infrastructure funding. Closing that one. Okay. It's happening. E, overall strategy for approving specific infrastructure project funding. That one, closure. Fund balance level, remain open. Downtown Alliance Safety Ambassador Program remain open, and I would like to schedule a briefing with the administration at their convenience to talk about how similar services could be used around the HRCs
Okay,
and perhaps in other areas of the city.
okay.
Okay. H, evaluate elected officials' compensation open. Any objection to leaving that open? I, secured parking on Fifth West Green Median, consider closing.
I would like an update from the admin, whether we keep it open or close it. I think when we funded this, I guess, a year and a half ago, and
Just a year ago.
was it just a year ago? It was always contemplated to be a temporary solution, so whether we open it or close it, I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to get some additional information from the admin on successes, failures, and when, how they imagine the future of this median to play out.
Okay.
And would you like that before 2019 or around 2019? Is there a urgency?
Just
Okay.
some time in the next
Okay.
6 months would be helpful for me.
We'll keep track of it and
Thank
keep
you.
reminding you.
And then we're into fiscal year 17. There's 3 more pages of this. Is there anything in the 17 you guys want to talk about or change from the staff status assessment? I'm sure Andrew Johnston would appreciate the metrics and reporting remaining open. Maintenance at city facilities and public services is obviously an ongoing conversation that's open. And then we've got 16, just one with the building permit fee cost study. We haven't had an update we haven't had a final response, I suppose. Okay. All right, council members. Thanks, Allison.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we enter into a closed session for the purpose of advice of counsel.
I have a motion by Councilmember Luke to enter into a closed session, second by Councilmember Fowler. Roll call, Councilmember Kitchen.
Yes.
Wharton. Fowler, obviously. And Luke.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And so with that, we're going to go into probably a 30-minute closed session, so don't set your camera up yet. And we will jump right back in with unresolved issues when we return. Should be right on time at 4:15 for unresolved issues.
Rasta, like, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe pull up on the screen? Oh, keep passing it. I can pull up on the screen. Do you have an extra copy?
Yeah.
But I'll look at it.
I was also going to pull up the unresolved issues staff report, since
Okay.
that has the legislative
Yeah,
intents.
and I have the key changes pulled up too. What I was thinking is that we just wait until they're done with all these and then we copy and paste them into the motion sheet.
Yep.
And same thing with the Northwest Quadrant.
Yeah, definitely.
Stuff. Which it sounds like we also, so we need to paste it 3 places, the RDA, the council, and the city budget amendment. Is there,
There is city budget amendment number 5,
okay.
which is for a vote tonight. But they already adopted both of the RDA budget amendments. 'Cause I,
Right, yeah, and I asked Cindy about that, because they didn't have, it's like,
They had to. Okay.
ability to do that.
Well, then there's only 2 weeks left.
Yeah, I'm like, if they're that smart, I literally told them that. I just don't think they are. You know,
That's why line 5 is blank.
oh, sure.
All right, welcome back. We're into item 3 on our agenda, the unresolved issues part. Ben Ludke and Jennifer Bruno, thanks for helping us march through all the parts of the mayor's recommended budget that aren't straightforward, that the council had
There's surprisingly
more
not
work
that
to
many.
do on. Yeah, there really aren't.
A few updates maybe from last week, if that's an okay place to start. Maybe I'll first start with the good news, which is that in the sort of finalization of the new growth property tax estimate, there was an additional $242,773 in new growth that was identified by the State Tax Commission that was on top of what the council had to consider last week. So we've included that in the top, sort of the top of this chart that was also in your unresolved issues staff report. So that chart that's in your staff report, the only things that were funded from last week are the things in yellow. So if you wanted to go through and decide how to allocate that to 242,000, I will note that on the bottom, that thing in yellow shows that the council straw polled using 83,000 of fund balance. So you could back that out if you wanted and then fund from the rest, or approach it however else. So,
Council members?
Madam Chair, given that we have luckily found some more money from the state or new growth, I would ask that we consider funding, if we look at the table, can you go up just a little bit? Thank you, dear. Items 12 and 13 on the table, which is the community health care paramedic and the public education specialist. And Jen, I think we had some additional numbers that were slightly different from what we had been given by when we were originally discussing this, do you mind kind of
Yeah.
informing everyone about that?
Council members had asked me if we planned on hiring these positions later in the year, as is done for some of the other new positions that are being added to the budget. There's the sort of ramp-up period that always occurs when a new either program or position is added to the budget, which is a one-time savings, but it's worth considering. So if you funded those positions as of October 1st, the cost would be for both of them $153,750. If you funded them as of September, it would be $170,833. So the question was, would that fit if you backed out the fund balance? Would that fit in the remainder? And it would fit in the remainder if you funded them as of October. So that was the question that was asked.
And so based on that information, my motion, I guess, would be to fund those two positions as of October 1st. And then I think, if I did my math right, but I'll leave it to Jen to be the math person in charge, that would leave, hold please, got to get to my math, almost $6,000 that I would suggest we put back to the fund balance.
So you back out.
Councilmember Luke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a creative way to accomplish the fire department's objectives, and I think by having October as the hiring time, it gives them some time to ramp up and figure that position out and advertise for it. So I am fully supportive and appreciate Amy for working on this.
Plus fund balance.
Anybody else want to speak to that?
Oh, this.
Councilmember Johnston, I know you do.
Are we going to talk about the stabilization question at some point?
That was my next update.
I think that ties right into this as well.
Okay.
So I hate to make this decision without knowing that.
Great. So another item that was identified yesterday was that there was a mistake made in the rate setting process last year, and what the effect of that rate setting was that the city budget was set at a rate where stabilization was realized, but not the new growth. The new growth that the city was sort of entitled to last year. There was a policy question debate last year of if the council wanted to take that new growth on top of the stabilization or sort of as a part of the stabilization. The council made the decision to take it on top of the stabilization. So the budget was set as if new growth happened, but the rate was not matched. So thankfully, the revenue that we've received this year has come in as if that rate was set correctly. So that gives the council the option of essentially pursuing the property tax stabilization concept and just adjusting the rate upwards to reflect that. The mayor's recommended budget we wouldn't have known this sort of mistake in the rate setting process when the mayor recommended her budget. So the mayor's recommended budget actually includes that full new growth amount last year as if the rate was set correctly. And so if the council doesn't want to pursue stabilization, the council would have to find that offsetting cut in expenses. So those are the options.
Which amounts to 1.3 million?
Yes.
And the process of stabilization will be happening regardless to an extent through the truth in taxation that has to happen in August anyway. Is that right?
The council, maybe a different way to answer it, and I don't know if this is the question you're asking, but the council would have to have a truth in taxation hearing in August anyway with, because the council is doing a judgment levy. The mayor proposed and the council is doing a judgment levy, which triggers that truth in taxation need. So if the council decided to do truth in taxation and set that rate to the correct amount, it would basically just increase what was noticed for the truth in taxation hearing.
Say it. Stabilization doesn't hit until you have a downturn, essentially, and it's a double whammy at that point. Because you lose revenue, but you have to keep it until everyone pays more. So it may not hit this year, but it's delayed essentially an increase. And that's my concern, is that it may not feel it this year, but it will feel it at some point when revenues stop coming in. And that's what I'm concerned about, just doing this and then also spending any extra money on programs that are great, But I guess a couple things. One, I'm concerned about the stabilization just as is and just passing that as is without a discussion about that. The second one is we pulled out 80,000 for the census coordinator out of the housing money. And to Charlie's previous points about being very clear and transparent about only using that money for what we said we're going to use it for, I would say pull it out of this if we're going to do the census again. And then my third piece would be the priorities left. I still think fund balance and parks would be the two things we would hit. We still don't fund our parks, what we need to do. And our fund balance, I mean, we actually decreased it. Even if we add this to replace what we decreased last week, and the rest of this, I think should, as much as possible, go to fund balance. But that would be my pitch. I hesitate to add in other things when our fundamentals are still so flawed. So, underfunded.
Councilmember Fowler, were you looking for a straw poll?
Unless anybody has anything else to say, yeah?
Do you want to just rephrase it? So it's 153,
It would be
750.
using this new growth dollars to fund 100 and something, what was that number?
153, 750.
Oh, it's up there.
And so it would be as of October 1st?
Yes,
The two
153,
positions.
750 as of October 1st for 2 new FTEs for the fire department and the community health care paramedic and the public education specialist, putting the remainder of that new growth money back into the fund balance. I think that's everything.
Leaving our dip into fund balance at $5,698.
So I actually think it's an add to fund balance.
Okay.
We have to, the minuses and pluses are kind of skewed on this chart just because of the way we've set up the chart, but it's an add to fund
Okay.
balance of 5,600.
Any other discussion?
It's to still go back to we funded the census out of the tax increase, and we were very clear before about not doing those kind of things, and we did it. And I get it, but if we have extra money, why shouldn't we go back and look at it that way? Fund out of the regular budget, rather than the tax increase.
Councilmember Wharton?
And would it be possible to to pay for some of the fire employees out of what we had originally allotted for public safety? Would that change, and then pay for the census designation from this?
I think that when we review, sorry.
I'm just saying, if we move where the money's coming from, does that assuage your concerns?
Not enough.
Well, I think it addresses the fundamental thing about moving money out of one to the other. But I think, again, it's about what did we discuss and are we willing to stand behind it or not, so.
Ben, can you take us back, or maybe it's on our, we were into fund balance at about 86? 83. And the appropriation from hand dollars to the census was 80? So,
But the new growth figure, the extra new growth figure was 242,000.
right. So maybe I'm reiterating what you were saying, Councilmember Wharton, but it's possible that we could, I'm trying to think this through. We could leave fund balance at a deficit, and instead of taking any money from the 400,000 of that component of the hand sales tax proposal, we could leave that whole and fund with the new growth money, the census position at 80,000. So it boils down to, are you more comfortable taking from fund balance or the sales tax, which we've clearly defined, and here we are.
I think the straw poll in front of us now is not about that. The straw poll in front of us now is leaving our past week the way it was and doing
Well, I
this
could
separately.
do
So
a
we had-
friendly amendment.
So, and that's my concern.
Well, it keeps your firefighter positions.
I think maybe I just didn't understand it. Can you rephrase it?
Yeah. So the friendly amendment would be that we don't adjust your proposal with the 153,750 for the 9 months of funding for 2 new FTEs in the fire department. That still comes out of the new growth, new dollars. But instead of refunding our deficit to fund balance of 83,325, we take 80,000 of that and put it toward the census position of $80,000, thus remaking the $400,000 from hand whole and staying perhaps more true to what we've said we would do with the sales tax dollars. Then we're accepting that we're dipping into fund balance. I still think it's a pretty minimal amount of dip into fund balance, and for the cost of, well, look, man, you got to weigh your values here. Is this about staying more true to what we said we'd do with sales tax, or is it about keeping our fund balance dip lower? And you got to choose one or the other. So that's my friendly amendment.
So let me just clarify. So basically we'd be funding the firefighter positions through the sales tax.
No,
No, the new growth.
new growth,
With the new growth, the census position would be funded with
new growth.
new growth, and we would only take, we'd take a smaller percentage from fund balance than we would.
Instead of, so if we went backward to where we left off last Tuesday, our fund, which is in your packet, our fund balance, we were taking 83,000 from
Yeah.
fund balance. So basically, we would still have, thank you, 74,302.
That you'd be taking from fund balance.
Right, instead of having
Instead
a
of putting some
positive
back in.
contribution of a few $1,000s.
Okay, if Andrew would be okay with that, I'm fine with that.
I don't like the choice between fund balance or that. I think that's a false choice. I think my priorities, at least for me, are I want to make sure we keep that sales tax as much as possible together. I think fund balance and parks are two major issues that are just not addressed, period. And so if I had my choice about any new revenue that's 200 coming in, that's where I would say those two. That's sort of my fundamental choice for me. I know there's other choices available to us on this list of unfunded things, but
I mean, I think frankly, the cleaner version is Amy's original amendment. But I'm fine going with the amended if it would make you feel better, or if that's truer. But I'd rather just stick with what Amy's doing than at least having some additional money back in fund balance.
It sounds like you won't be able to support either option.
yeah.
So you've been a good advocate, Councilmember Luke, for staying true to the
Yep.
to what we've said sales tax would be.
Yep.
And I think if you are feeling like the census positions are kosher with what we've said we would do with sales tax money, then that's true. You know, it's just a matter of,
Yeah.
is it more palatable to dip into fund balance
Yeah, I
than
mean,
it is to use
that was,
tax
we
for
made that
something new?
decision last week. I ended up getting comfortable with it. I'm fine going back, but, having a positive fund balance amount, I get why that would be important rather than decreasing it, but I think we're arguing over, I don't know what we're really arguing about at this point, so I'll support whatever. Let's straw poll either the amended version or this version. I just want to have the fire positions funded, the
I was
census
going to say, we
positions
could
funded.
break it up.
No,
you
let's
wanna-
just,
Do,
Oh, I see.
No, I feel the same way, actually, as Charlie. I don't think that I know that the census is very important for people to have funded. And it is because I think that it's true in that it will get us, hopefully, some more money as we have a census consultant and somebody there helping us to get that more money. So I'm actually okay with Aaron's amended version and having less of the fund balance and dipping into that fund balance. Honestly, I was putting some money into the fund balance because I agree that we need to maintain something there, but I don't know that I can make Andrew happy on this at all. So I'm kind of at a kind of indifferent. I mean, I would vote for either version at this point. So Aaron, I agree. Your motion was the last friendly amendment. I don't know if there's been a
Madam
second.
Chair, I would like to move forward with that one. I like the idea of dropping money down to fund balance.
So the original proposal.
Actually, I think it was the one that Aaron proposed,
Yeah.
where we're using the new growth formula to fund those positions.
To fund the
So, okay,
census
so
position.
this chart is misleading because it looks like a positive number to fund balance, but in the context of this chart, that means you're using fund balance.
I want to use the least amount of money possible.
Okay, so
for
that
fund
was
balance.
Amy's
I
original
like
motion.
Amy's.
Which would fund the 2 firefighters from the new growth, or the 2 fire positions from the new growth, and drop the remainder to fund balance.
And continue to fund the census position
Through
from
the-
sales tax.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is still more transparent than having the number of police officers after the public engagement part was done.
Okay, got a motion. Is it clear to everybody? Clear as mud. Any other discussion?
Right, okay.
All those in favor? I like the firefighters, but I don't like using sales tax for something else, but you got it. That's 5 in favor, so we're gonna make fund balance a little more whole.
Right. So then the next straw poll would be the stabilization question. If the council is comfortable setting the rate, it would be no change to the key changes because the revenue and expenses are already assumed. But it would be directing staff to prepare the rates that include that.
Right.
Yeah, well, this is a very confusing topic too. So it wouldn't affect the proposed budget. It wouldn't affect key changes because the mayor's recommended budget included that amount as if it was happening. But it would direct staff to adjust the rates to reflect that. So it would be the same as the council has done in previous years of setting the rate to receive the same amount of property tax revenue next year that was received this year. It's called property tax stabilization.
So, Madam Chair, I just have a follow-up question to that then. So no matter what, even if we do stabilization, we would have a truth and taxation hearing no matter what in August.
Right, and that's because the city decided to do a judgment levy, and a judgment levy automatically triggers the truth and taxation process.
Okay.
So the alternative to doing the stabilization would be to fund it, do cuts out of a budget or fund it through other means, at least parts of it? Could you decrease the amount of stabilization essentially if you were to fund it through other funds we had, the budget?
I don't know what, maybe like a sales tax increase, is that what you're thinking?
I'm just thinking out of our either extra funds we found,
Right.
200,000 would decrease the amount of
Right.
stabilization.
I think the challenge is that then it wouldn't be guaranteeing those funds in the future, which depending on your point of view is okay. So setting the property tax rate means that is the new watermark for the city's property tax revenue. And truth in taxation means that you'll never go below that watermark. So you could fund it through fund balance.
So that's my point, is that we don't feel it now, but when it's a big deal to have a bond this fall, and it's a property tax increase essentially, right? I mean, effectively you pay more through that. This is the same thing. It's deferred until we have a bad economic time, and then it hits us. That's where my concern comes about framing it that way.
Right.
So.
And I think that just the more we've been thinking about this, just in general, that's the way the state tax law is set up, is that in times of downturns, ironically, people's property taxes go up because that's the way the truth in taxation system is set to guarantee cities the same amount of revenue. So
You have a proposal?
I'd go back and use as much as we can to keep that as minimal as possible, but
You mean go back into the budget and find cuts?
pay off it. I mean, if we had $240,000 here, we could have used towards some of that. But and it's a little bit. It's not going to solve the whole thing, but it doesn't ignore it either. I mean, that's sort of the thing I want to make sure we're kind of cognizant of. So.
I wish we could replay the conversations we had last year around recognizing new growth and setting the tax level to recognize the actual growth that's happening in the city. That's where my mind is.
yeah.
That's why I'm okay doing this
And
stabilization.
it
personally.
absolutely was the intent of the council to set that rate. And had it been done last year, it would have continued into the current year.
Right.
So, yep.
Okay. Anyone else want to, we need a straw poll, right?
Just so that staff knows how to, we'll set the
Prepare
rates, for the ordinances for tonight. So,
Anybody want to make a straw poll? No? Somebody could make a straw poll to recognize new growth through the property tax stabilization and hold and address this in our truth and taxation meeting in August. August 14th. Someone could make that motion. Okay, I'll hand this meeting over and make that motion myself. Councilmember Wharton, will you take over this meeting? I move that we instruct staff to move ahead with property tax stabilization for August 14th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
thank you.
All right, that's unanimous passage.
Thank you, Councilmember Wharton. It's hard that we get these numbers. We don't really see it until June 8th.
Yeah.
And then we have to finalize our budget by June 22nd, but our last meeting day for the month is today. So it is very short time. Will you pull your mic up? We had 200,000 today, you said?
Yeah, we had 200,000 that were new revenue we hadn't allocated today, and we decided, that's my concern, is that this was also on the table, and this was on the table, and we separated them out. As soon as we had to do the stabilization, which we do to some extent if we're going to balance the budget. I mean, if we're not going to be cuts, we have to do the stabilization. But then there's plenty of other things on the unresolved list that were desires or needs, valid issues we needed, from the ambassador program to everything else. And that's the frustration piece about this. I know we don't control the state tax code, but to not combine those two and say that it's a balanced ledger sheet, that's my concern about this. So.
Well, one thing you could have done is in this budget process, in anticipation of the potential of less revenue than we were projecting, the council could have said, this is where we will cut. Here's our priority, and this is our weakest link. We could have straw polled that before today and prepared ourselves to deal with the priorities, and we didn't. And nobody offered that. And that's been an opportunity. So if next year in the budget process, council members feel this way, leading with this memory in our minds, you can look at the budget that way, and you can start proposing where those cuts will happen from. But I think it's a long 6-week process that we go through to finalize a budget, and we're a couple hours from doing that now. So it's difficult without having those conversations beforehand. Okay, staff, let's get into this big document.
Yeah, so the big document is important to go through, but a couple of the sort of placeholders, the green in the sort of Rasta color scenario, are the legislative intents and contingent appropriations, and those are actually in your unresolved issues staff report. So we've just literally collected all of the ideas that have been suggested or mentioned for legislative intents or contingent appropriations. So they're on pages 2 and 3 of your unresolved issues staff report. If you want, we can go through all of them individually, or we can have silent reading time, and you can read all of them and suggest if there's any language edits or if there are any legislative intents or contingent appropriations that the council's not comfortable with. If we don't hear any changes, our plan is to take these lists and put them onto the motion sheet in the places where it says insert from unresolved issues staff report. So maybe once we go through those, then we can walk through the actual motion sheet. Do you want to go through one by one or kind of as a batch?
Let's go one by one. There's not that many.
So one by one of the legislative intents, which is actually on the unresolved issues staff report, just to make sure that we've got the language okay. And then we'll go through the motion sheet, because the legislative intents will inform what ends up on the motion sheet. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we're on page 2.
Yep.
With the following could be considered legislative intents.
Right.
And you were wanting us to straw poll?
If you would like, we can do one by one, or we could do it as a group. What I was explaining is that we've collected them all based on comments, and so we haven't necessarily, the council hasn't necessarily straw polled each of these as we've been going, and so staff just wanted to get kind of a final sign off before you saw them on your motion sheet at 7.
Madam Chair, I'd prefer to go one by one.
Okay.
That's okay.
Great. There's 13, huh?
Yep. I'm going to be making a lot of straw polls, though.
Serious?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I move that we amend number 1, excuse me, I move that we straw poll number 1, the general fund subsidy for golf, and that it's our intent to subsidize this for 1 year only, allowing council and administration to vet all options.
Cindy?
I'm sorry, just a procedural thing, and it'll make your life easier, not worse, and that is that when you're in RDA, you need to do your motions and seconds and the formal vote. In the formal meeting, you also need to do that, but in this committee of the whole format, you can just propose a straw poll if you're called on by the chair. You don't need to make a motion, you don't need to have a second, and that's why you can do the up and down thumb voting. So it's hard to adjust once you've just been in RDA, but and then the chair can propose straw polls from the chair without turning it over. So there's...
Just propose a straw poll.
Yeah. So I'm just, I so do it hereby. Make it so.
And no demerits have been issued.
No demerits will be, it will be issued to me by me.
Will you rephrase your straw poll?
My straw poll is to approve the legislative intent language listed in paragraph number 1 about general fund subsidy for golf.
Any discussion? Everybody ready? Golf? Look at that. Did you see this? I have a thumbs up on golf.
No.
It makes my stomach turn a little bit. So we've got 6 up, 1 down with Councilmember Kitchen. Keep going, Councilmember Wharton, or if anyone else wants to jump in, let me know.
I propose a straw poll that we approve the legislative intent for number 2, parking ticket budgeted revenue alignment with actual revenue.
All those in favor? Okay, 6 up, 1 down with Councilmember Johnston.
I propose the straw poll for the to adopt number 3, performance measures for homeless services funding.
All those in favor? That one's unanimous.
Okay. I propose a straw poll for number 4, that to adopt the language neighborhood ambassador program for HRCs.
All those in favor? Yeah, please, discussion.
Okay.
I need a mic on. There we go. I guess I just want more information about it, and maybe that's what the intent of this is supposed to be, that we just want the information around it.
Yep.
So I just...
It's related to an intent from last year where the council asked the Downtown Alliance to consider it, and the Downtown Alliance's response was basically it's not really in their purview. And so this is basically continuing that idea of wanting the council to have more information, and now it would be the administration gathering that.
And could I jump in here that the mayor and chief of police attended Liberty Wells Community Council maybe 6 months ago, a long time ago, around concerns around Liberty Park. I was in the audience. And the administration committed to working with the 3 community councils that surround Liberty Park, Central City, Elpco, and Liberty Wells to try to come up with community-generated proposals that the administration could consider for improving the experience in the park, the quality of life in the park. I know that that process has been happening and that the administration has a contract with D2C to work with the communities around that. And my understanding is a survey happened out in the community and that the administration is working on some concept or that could perhaps be piloted in the park, but really for implementation around HRCs eventually. So I think this has been in the works. And
Okay, thank you for that.
okay, any other discussion to that motion to approve the, okay. Straw poll, everybody in line on number 4, thumbs up if you like it. And Councilmember Johnston, you have
Yeah,
something
I
else?
think the name's deceiving, though. I think it complicates the problem, putting ambassadors in there. I think a safety plan or planning that way makes total sense to me. The reason the ambassadors are set up to help businesses downtown, to make referrals to other existing agencies. They don't actually house people, they don't actually sort of move them, that kind of thing. And so putting ambassador in here or something similar, maybe it just doesn't sort of fit very well. The intent is right. I think there's a lot of things going on that way and should happen that way, but that's why I get concerned about the intent language here.
It does just say similar to the downtown ambassadors. Okay,
Well-
do you want to amend or,
No.
okay, so we've got a straw poll
Do
to,
you want to offer the friendly amendment?
Well, I think that it should be creating programs to address, the neighbor. I think making it open so that it's flexible to figure out what the right option is. I think anything similar to the, I'll be blunt, anything similar to the downtown ambassadors means people go out and see a homeless person and move them. Does that make sense? It'd be nice if we had an ability to have service providers who are already doing it brought into the conversation about what's existing programs out there that are working or something else. That's my concern, yeah. Because we can push this down the aisle towards an ambassador program, which may be duplicating or not consolidating with other existing services. That's my
Andrew,
concern about
are you
it.
looking at this more of like, it's non-social worker, social worker program like we've funded in the police department? Is that what you're thinking?
I
Where
guess
individuals around the HRCs helping?
If the intent is to mitigate negative consequences around the HRCs, I think we put that specifically in there about a plan to mitigate negative consequences around the HRCs. I think that's what I would support.
was that a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Accepted.
Okay.
And restate.
And restated
Can you restate it so we make sure to
in
get the language
shorter
right?
format, please?
The intent of the council that the administration consider options for creating safety programs to offset negative consequences.
Okay.
The reason I say safety programs is because in our conditional use permit we did for the HRCs, each of them have to come up with their own safety plan that includes certain things like this, and it'd be nice to dovetail them together.
And I feel like safety's too narrow, and there's a social aspect to the ambassador program that isn't just safety oriented that I like connecting. I like taking the public safety part as part of it, but also the opportunity to connect people with services, which isn't safety. Okay, so you made a friendly amendment, you approve it? I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. Everybody in favor? Crying out loud, that's unanimous. Okay, number 5.
I propose that we adopt the language set forth in number 5 regarding evaluating additional medical response unit for the fire department.
Any discussion? Everybody in favor? Unanimous, okay.
Madam Chair, I propose a straw poll to adopt the legislative intent language in item number 6, streamlining the permitting process.
Any discussion? All those in favor? We have 8 in favor.
Madam Chair, I propose that we adopt the intent language set forth in item number 7, prostitution outreach program.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, 8 again,
There are
great.
8 thumbs up.
Okay.
Okay. Madam Chair, I propose that we adopt the intent language in number 8 regarding surplus land inventory.
Any discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Come on, you're not that excited about surplus land inventory.
Come on.
Okay.
Is it just surplus or not all land?
Just surplus. Yeah. Madam Chair, I propose that we adopt the intent language for future freight strategy as set forth in number 9 in our packet.
Any discussion on that one? Okay, all those in favor?
Madam Chair, I propose that we adopt the intent language regarding item 10, fleet insurance for high-risk vehicles.
Discussion? Question marks? Okay, all those in favor? Well, it's mostly unanimous, couple, okay.
Madam Chair, I move that I propose a straw poll that we adopt the intent language on number 11 regarding cybersecurity for the city.
I have a friendly amendment that we also approve the intent language on 12 and 13.
Yes, I agree.
Any
Accept it.
discussion?
How come we're only including the housing program and sales tax? I mean, the fire department, excuse me.
I couldn't hear you.
We're only doing fire department and housing, but not other safety or roads.
Okay, I withdraw my friendly amendment and we can do that one separately.
Okay,
So,
so
11.
cybersecurity
11.
only.
All those in favor or discussion, sorry? Cybersecurity, I've got 6.
And Madam Chair, I think there's a little extra information. Cindy, I don't know if you probably know more about this, so.
Yes. As you're going through the budget process, everything else in the city is still moving forward, of course, and our IMS director was continuing to work on the security issue and had a nice opportunity come up where for the same dollar amount, you can begin to go onto a program where it's a multiple year program, so you'll be paying each year, I don't know if subscription is the right word, but it would enable the city to address in a much more comprehensive way the security issues that the council was worried about in the briefing with the Director Daley. So instead of having a conversation each year about should we buy the servers this year or should we buy this piece or that piece, it's a comprehensive package that could be installed with the city up front, and then you pay the annual cost. So I
And
slaughtered that a little, but
Will that be coming to us in a budget amendment then?
no, it's the same dollar amount that was proposed in the mayor's recommended budget.
Oh.
The thing to know about it is instead of talking next year about which piece to buy and spending about the same amount of money, you'll be seeing an appropriation of an ongoing payment.
And I think we would likely clarify the title and the key changes. If the council was okay with it, we could clarify the title and the key changes document now and save the administration from having to come back in a budget amendment to turn a one-time funding source into an ongoing funding source. Is that another way to kind of say it?
Yeah, so on a lot of things, you wouldn't want to do this just from the dais here, but computer technology and security seemed to be something that the council wanted to spend more time on in an executive session, and he just happened to be able to bring a solution.
Okay, so would it be helpful to have a straw poll to amend the key changes section of the budget now while it's open?
If the council's comfortable with it, we don't want to, obviously, given that the information is all verbal, we don't want to rush you into it, but it's an opportunity, so.
And is it one that we could address in the next budget opening in a budget amendment?
It would just mean that would be delayed until that budget opening.
Yeah. So the dollar amount is not changing for this year.
What kind of a straw poll do do we need to phrase this as?
That you are accepting of the administration's revised plans to make this an annual
Allocation?
allocation. Made that up, but. And this did come to us through the mayor's office.
Does that make sense? So we've got to, I'll do a straw poll that we accept the administration's revision of the cybersecurity expenditure. All those in favor? Okay, there.
We'll make that change. Great. Thank you.
you.
So I'll speak a little bit to why the Funding Our Future is sort of in different places, and I apologize if this approach makes it more confusing. We went back and forth as staff many times to try and think about what made sense. We have all the legislative intents together and all the contingent appropriations together, and that means that Funding Our Future and those kinds of things are kind of sprinkled in different places. There is one section that's a conditional appropriation, and that will be its own motion about Funding Our Future that has a laundry list of things. That's in that next section under number 13. So we we could have approached it differently, but we went back and forth, and this is where we landed, and so my apologies if that's more confusing. So this is a Funding Our Future related legislative intent. It happens to relate to housing. The next one is a Funding Our Future legislative intent that relates to the fire department.
Councilmember Wharton?
Madam Chair, I propose a straw poll that we adopt the intent language for numbers 12 and 13 regarding housing program outcome report and new sales tax funds for the fire department.
Discussion? And I guess I had a question on the public safety category of the Funding Our Future. Does that mean that it could be there, the funding allocation could be expanded, or that within the existing, I know that we're looking at not 9 months, but 12 months there. So I guess I'm wondering about the definition or the financing itself. Councilmember Fowler, please.
Go ahead.
I think for me, and what we kind of, I think may kind of come from some of the things I've talked about throughout the budget meetings, and I think it's more of just the definition of what public safety means, is that expanding that. I know that, Madam Chair, you've brought up some ideas of, that have been brought up about, park rangers and funding. So I think it's more of just definition of how we are defining public safety. It seems like in everything that has thus far been funded through public safety, or that idea is only our police force, when we've recognized that there may be other ways to keep our communities safe that include different programs. So I don't think it's so much an intent to say, financially we're going to do this, more of an intent to say, as we look in the future at spending hopefully some tax revenue that we are able to get, that we're looking at public safety as a broad category instead of a narrow, just one police department.
I agree with that. I think it's just that this even narrows it to just say the fire department. Could we say the fire department and other public safety?
Sure, I think we could just actually say it's the intent of the council that the administration evaluate whether there are cost, or evaluate, maybe we just change that language to broaden the definition of public safety while evaluating what should or what could be funded through the sales tax. So we're kind of switching that around. Did you guys get that at all? That are writing things down for me?
To evaluate.
No? Not really. Good thing it's recorded.
So starting with the funded in the public safety category, you would put that before evaluate?
Yeah, so the council
After
administration.
Broaden the definition of public safety evaluation.
When evaluating what could be funded through Funding Our Future. That sort of makes sense?
Yeah, because I think that, or Madam Chair,
Please do.
because I do think that the fire department, there are legitimate needs in the public safety description that the sales tax could be used for. And I think we can also make the same argument for dispatch and 911.
Yeah.
So I think really the police department, fire department, and dispatch, all are, could easily be considered as public safety. Well, they are considered as public safety. So as long as the language that Amy just proposed, could include all three of them, and I think it does, I think that makes sense.
So the new language would read, well, Ben's typing what minute. The title would be New Sales Tax Funds for Public Safety instead of the Fire Department. And it would read, it is the intent of the council that the administration broaden the definition of public safety when evaluating what to fund through Funding Our Future. Or something like that. Okay.
And are we, did I hear straw poll to do 12 and 13 together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? That one's unanimous.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
For the next item, we have had discussion on each of these, and I think we've straw polled them in previous meetings. So I would make a motion that we straw poll the next section together. So the following would be considered conditional appropriations, remove the word potential. And it would be all of the items listed, 1A through G.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Great. That passes unanimously.
Great.
Thank you.
And then the next section is contingent appropriations that are more specific to other items. So.
But we took care of those already, didn't we?
No.
So we're approaching the Funding Our Future one with conditional appropriations, which is a little bit different than contingent appropriations. Contingent appropriations, it's a semantics thing, but it's contingent appropriations allows finance to sort of check a box before releasing funds. In the conditional appropriations, the funds are going to have to be spent ongoing. And so it's just so that the administration understands for the record what the council's intent is and is not in funding that. And so that's what that A through G list is, which is slightly different than the concept of a contingent appropriation, which is that the funds aren't released until some contingency is satisfied.
Right, thank you.
So the first one, for example, that the funds aren't released until the council has an opportunity for input on this biennial survey.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilmember Wu.
Since we've also previously straw polled each of these, I would move that the following would be considered contingent appropriations and include item 1 through 4.
Any discussion? Councilmember Wharton?
Oh, no, I was just getting ready to vote.
Sorry, I was looking at Johnston.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Chris. The 30,000 funding for biennial survey, we haven't said the scope of that, have we, anywhere?
They haven't developed a scope for it yet because they didn't have sufficient funding available. So I would imagine they would develop a scope for it if this funding was approved.
Because part of my intent, as one of 7, was this should be tied into the Funding Our Future money.
Yeah, and I think that, by having the contingency being that the council having the opportunity for input on the survey focus and questions, I think the intent that we need to be very clear about is not just that the administration comes to the council with a survey prepared and, says what do you think? But instead that we're a part of those discussions to Andrew's point so that we can ensure that the sales tax issue is dealt with.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Andrew, did you mean tied to Funding Our Future so that we see where the tax is going, or the funding itself for the biennial survey would come somewhere out of an increase more than we were expecting of a tax revenue? I think I was a little confused.
No, the dashboard that's spoken of in here is really a dashboard to monitor expenditure of funds, right? It's not a dashboard to talk about what happened because of the funds were spent or what benefits came to the city, what improvements came. There's nothing to measure that piece, and that's where my concern was. And the survey is an existing tool that hasn't been fully funded, but using that to show, did public safety actually go up,
Got it.
for
Okay.
instance? That was my intent, and they're not officially in here tied together, saying this could inform those funds.
Can
So-
I give a suggestion, and maybe staff can correct me, that we could do a legislative intent that the results of the biennial survey inform next year's considerations of the Funding Our Future revenue? At least then our staff will help us to remember that we meant to do that. Okay. Councilmember Luke, did you make a motion on
I
this?
did.
Somebody make a
I
motion?
did,
And Madam Chair.
and I accept that friendly amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Can I clarify, and maybe it's worth, to separate out number 2, because number 2 right now is a placeholder that relates to the Northwest Quadrant, and I think the council had some additional conversations that would probably put different language on number 2. So maybe 1, 3, and 4 could be straw polled. I
Councilmember
don't
Luke?
mean to make a friendly amendment,
yeah.
but.
No, that's good. I accept the chair's friendly amendment that restates what Jennifer just said.
Thank you very much for phrasing that for me. Okay, council members, 1, 3, 4, all those in favor? This is how we tie up a budget, folks.
Show up number 4, it's not on the page.
And I believe this particular number 4 was also straw polled when you guys had your Funding Our Future conversation.
So I've got 6, I've got 7. Okay, we're unanimous on that one. Now, do we want to get into 2?
You can if you want, otherwise staff can just proceed with the language that has been circulated among council members.
Okay, we're gonna. Councilmember Luke, you had nothing? Okay. That, unless I've got any other straw polls.
And just for the public record, we'll put that language in the motion sheet. We're going to have a lot of edits to the motion sheet, and so we'll make that motion sheet available probably just before the 7 o'clock meeting. We'll post it online and we'll pass it out to anyone in the audience who's trying to follow along. Is that okay, Cindy?
Referring to this being
Yes.
draft, even still,
Yes,
that the conversations we're having now are informing
right.
this. Cindy?
And I would say that if anyone would like to see a draft of the Northwest Quadrant language before that 7 o'clock hour, we could get somebody to make a copy, might have pencil marks on it and things, but.
Okay. Anything next for us?
Nope, just that maybe to orient you to the motion sheet, what we'll do is we'll work over the next 2 hours, less than 2 hours, to make sure that the language that you need to, the only language that you need to read is the language in red. We try and minimize the amount of language you need to read, just so you know, since it gets kind of repetitive. One question we have is that in some previous years, we've separated out legislative intents where there has been a split vote. It looks like there's only 2 legislative intents where there was a 6-to-1 vote. Do the ones, I think it was Derek in one case for golf and Andrew in one case for the parking ticket budgeted revenue with actual revenue. Do you want us to separate those out so that you can vote on those separately without having to not vote for the rest of the legislative intents? Okay, so we'll separate that out and it will be in section 7. So just know that motion will actually probably be 7A and 7B. So that those can be voted on separately. And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, if you have any questions. Do you have any questions?
I think just logistically, there's not a lot of detail. Thank you for not giving us too many words in red, but Councilmember Rogers is chairing in June in our formal meetings. And if certain council members want to make certain motions, I encourage you to coordinate that with Councilmember Rogers in advance. Anything else, Jennifer and Ben?
I think that's it.
Okay.
The last thing which staff emailed the council members earlier today is the request from the administration to approve $2 million in Class C funds as part of CIP instead of waiting until later in the summer and the fall when the council typically looks at project level funding.
Right.
And the urgency is because the money is needed as matching funds for a federal build grant. The city would be matching $3 million, $1 million of which is already available. And it would be for $12 million in federal funds, and it would be for reconstructing 300 West from 600 South to 2100 South.
Did you hear that, people? 300 West. That's an HRC area.
And so where that would show up,
Do you want to say that? Okay.
where that would show up is motion number 6, which also approves the debt service payments, because those payments are often due before the council's allocation, and
Okay.
you're kind of contractually obligated to pay them. So we assume that you're okay with that.
Great. Anything else? Thank you so much for helping us put pen to paper on the nuances that we found in the budget and get our legislative intents in order. With that, we're going to move on to item 4, our resolution for interlocal agreement for new road construction projects on Northwest Quadrant. And Russell Weeks is with us. And Director Mike Rieberg, thank you. And Matt Castle, thanks for joining us as well. Russell, would you mind starting the discussion for us?
Yes, simply put, this is a resolution that would pass through about $2.6 million in county funds to the city to use to pay a company for the expenses incurred in building 2 streets that ultimately will become public streets.
Director Rieberg, anything else?
We're just here to answer questions if you have any.
Okay. Council members, do you have any questions? Pretty straightforward. Councilmember Johnston?
Why not? Do we ever use red asphalt instead of black? Is there a
Not yet.
policy about this?
No, we've actually been contemplating, there's ideas about doing white asphalt, or at least,
Yeah.
so, but not red.
Anything else, council members? Councilmember Fowler, then Luke, then Wharton. Where did that come from?
No, so I didn't have any questions until you brought the white asphalt thing up, so can you explain that?
There's a product out there, and we'd like to try it, and we just have to figure out where to use it. It's to help with heat island effect. You know, black absorbs
Yeah.
heat, white doesn't to the same extent. So it's any color that would reduce the heat island effects and absorption of heat. We want to look at and see if there's a possibility. We wouldn't start in the roads because of the high maintenance. We'd start trying it in parking lots or some other place.
No, I think that's cool. How does it deal with glare, though? It seems like there would be a glare issue, but
We're not sure. It's actually being put down in LA in a couple of places right now. They're actually doing it on the street, so we're kind of keeping an eye on it.
okay. Oh, very cool. Great, thanks.
Councilmember Fowler?
Madam Chair, I would just make a motion at this time, if I can, that the council adopt a resolution authorizing approval of an interlocal cooperation agreement.
I think we'd do that at the formal meeting.
Oh. Well, I'm not going to do
I
that.
know. It's
I'm
tricky
telling you
because
that
it's
I am
in there.
going to do that.
Your intention is there.
It is. There you go.
I appreciate that. Councilmember Wharton?
So how far off are we from being able to try white asphalt somewhere? I'm sorry, I'm super interested in it, and
It's going to get so dirty.
yeah.
We're not super close. We're keeping an eye on what they're doing in LA and how it works and how durable it is. But we'll get there, but it's not going to be like this summer.
Next summer?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
Can you invite Councilmember Wharton and myself to
Yes.
work with you on that one? Because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah.
Put them on a paving truck. That's what they need.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
I'll take a medium vest and an awkward shaped helmet to fit on my head. Thank you.
Great. You didn't see that one coming, huh? Looks like the interlocal's all right, though. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. We're going
Thank you, council members.
We'll move on to our advice and consent. Item 5 of Lisa Burnett, Director of the 911 Bureau. Lisa, come on up, and Mayor Biskupski, I'm sure you want to join her. Lisa, you're a familiar face for us, but Mayor, give us an introduction or whatever format you want to take it in.
Well, thank you for putting this on the agenda today. We're very excited to move Lisa into this role, and I think it'd be nice if she gave you a little bit of her background, especially for those of you who are new and maybe haven't had a chance to work with her for very long.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Lisa Burnett. I've worked for Salt Lake City 26 and a half years. Seems like just yesterday. I've started as a frontline dispatcher and worked my way up to deputy director, and now I'm interim director, hoping to be director. And I have seen plenty of changes within public safety, and I feel like now is a great time to be in the role of a dispatch leader because there's plenty of great changes coming. Not only with the new Hexagon CAD project, but some ideas I've had for quite a while and have not been able to implement.
Yeah. More to come.
Thanks. Council members, questions? Councilmember Rogers?
Yeah, it's not very often that we have you come in for a budget and then, we're looking to appoint you as the director. I just want you to know that through the budget process, I was extremely impressed with your abilities and the way that you communicated and how you knew the department. So I look forward to seeing you as I'm going to support you as the director of this department. So
thank you so much. You guys were scary.
yeah, no, it was you. You really did a fantastic job. So I was really impressed.
In every way. Yes.
Well, it helps to really know a budget, and Lisa certainly has that skill set, so.
Anything else, council members? It's not usually this easy, Lisa.
Yeah.
In that case, even though you're terrifying, that's awfully nice of you to let me off so
Give me a
easy.
pass,
I
yeah.
did fly back in from Vegas
Today.
to be with you.
To be here.
And I have to fly back out tonight because I'm in Vegas for the Hexagon CAD project. And this is going to be so awesome, and I look forward to meeting with you all and discussing that in the near future.
Yeah.
We do too.
Yeah.
Thank you. You need not stick around for the formal consent process. That'll be on our formal agenda later tonight.
Okay.
Go get on a plane.
All right,
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Oh, it's nice when it's quick and easy. Look, we're ahead of schedule now, and we're moving on to item 6, the funding our future general obligation bond for streets. Did we want to do that one tonight? It's tentative on our agenda. I'm looking to Jennifer. We do have time. We do have time.
All right.
Come on up, Liz Bueller and Kira Luke. Let's talk about the general obligation bond for streets.
So we thought that this might be a great time to orient since the budget's wrapping up. Public engagement for the general obligation bond is underway. I had just a couple of questions to clarify what we think we've heard from council members so far, and that is the intention of using 80% of the funding towards arterial and collectors and 20% towards local streets, prioritizing them from the worst in their respective categories. And I offered that language. I don't know if you guys have the staff report in front of you, but the policy questions are, does the council have any concerns, or does the council wish to hold any further discussion?
I'm fond of 70-30, but I'm flexible.
Do you want me to make a straw poll?
If there isn't any other discussion to Kira's points, yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, so before I do that, I'll just say that I'm with Aaron. I actually like the 70-30 match, but because of the work that we're going to be doing through the sales tax and the money that we're going to be putting into increased transit, I think we're going to need to see more of that revenue going to the arterial streets because the arterial streets are going to be the areas that are going to be mostly used for those transit routes. So I would propose that we actually do stick with the 80-30 or 80-20 model. I'm making up math. That we stick with the 80-20 model, 80% for arterials, 20% for residential streets, but with the prioritization the way that Kira just mentioned.
So we've got a straw poll. I just want to say that an 80-30 approach might be a way for us to give priority, that if the sales tax revenue is actually greater,
Yeah.
we'd say instead of it
But I
going.
don't want Andrew's hair to catch on fire if I'm making up math, so we'll stick with the 80-20.
Okay, any discussion to Charlie's motion?
Madam Chair, if I may, just a quick question. With the prioritization, does it also take into account the equity throughout all of the districts? Or is it just, we look at all of these streets and it is worst to non-worst? I'm not going to say best because I don't think there is a best in the city right now, but a worst to non-worst.
This currently is fairly broad as a starting point that we can feel comfortable going out and engaging based on. So we are anticipating many more conversations to fine-tune the details. So we only have worst first written down now. If the council's comfortable firming up preferences beyond that,
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please do.
I would make a friendly amendment to Charlie's straw poll that the prioritization language and I don't know exactly what that will look like, but it include equity throughout the districts in some way as the public engagement is going forward. And maybe.
Sorry, just to add to that. So the 80-20 split, 80 on arterials, that focuses on the worst, but there was also discussion for that 20% on concentrating on local streets, that be spread across all 7 districts. Because there are plenty of candidates across all 7 districts.
As the maker of the motion, I totally accept that as a friendly amendment. But I would, as long as your intent is that parity be across the board, so including the 80% for arterials and the 20%.
Okay, wait. I just want to make sure that, I've said a couple times that I don't think council members should be picking streets.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of get into that when we say, now instead of going off the analysis, pick that one that's maybe at a different position on the list because we need you to balance this out. And I just want to be cognizant of that we're not sticking to the analytics necessarily.
Madam Chair,
If we
to that point, you're absolutely right. I don't think we should be doing this. But with the, sorry, I
knew it was coming.
Well, but no, here's the point though. I think that, as we have the public engagement for this bond, it is going to be on the ballot, and I think that we have to have some sort of assurance that there will be citywide parity, because it's already going to be a big ask anyway. And I think the public needs to know that, this is something that everybody across the city will be benefiting from, that there isn't just, total administrative discretion on where that is going to be. So I'm looking at it not just from, from us picking the streets, but rather as a message to our constituency that we are very committed to making sure that this be done citywide.
Councilmember Johnston?
Perhaps the intent language could be broad enough to say that geographic parity should be a part of the discussion or something similar that way. Because the reality is the arterial streets are going to be downtown.
Yeah.
That's where the heavy use goes. It's one area. It's where a lot of the out-of-city commuters come through. So we have to acknowledge that and not overpromise up front. But I think the language is clear, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
So.
And we've done something similar with Derek's point about complete streets, that we've added that as a piece that is something that, that there is intent language saying, that it needs to be taken into consideration. I think, we could mirror that language, that citywide distribution of this, that be taken into consideration as well. So I think that works.
And I want to recognize that the list is so deep.
Yes.
That there are 10 roads that are in the fourth worst position. I'm making that up, but.
No.
Okay, so we've got a straw poll that will help them proceed with public outreach to do 80-20 with geographic equity as a consideration. Any other discussion? Everybody understand? All those in favor? Does that help you all proceed?
Yes, thank you.
Any other clarifying points?
And I just so you know, postcards are going in the mail on Thursday, so that means your constituents will start receiving them Friday through Tuesday of next week. Also, we're doing a major redesign of the website to focus on the dashboard for the sales tax, but also for this bond engagement.
Great. The dashboard's looking really good so far, so thank you. All right, thank you, Liz and Kira. We're going to move on to the Salt Lake County Transit Tax, item 7 on our agenda. I do see Andrew Gruber in the audience, who helped us have a discussion last time about this, and would you mind if I invite you up in case we have any other questions as the font of information regarding this county option? And Russell Weeks, thank you. Russell, you want to start us?
Well, only to say that staff in the attorney's office have prepared a formal resolution, and that you all have seen that resolution at least, and there were two additions today dealing with simply facts about what the council has done or what the council knows. It's in like the 5th and 6th whereases that read, whereas the City Council in December 2017 adopted the Transit Master Plan for the city to guide future transit development in Salt Lake City, and whereas according to the 2017 citywide pavement survey of road and street conditions, 2/3 of Salt Lake City roads and streets were in poor condition or worse. The rest of that language is essentially taken from a form that the Utah League of Cities and Towns produced after SB 136 was passed, and tailored to some issues and facts about Salt Lake City.
Council members, any discussion on this one?
Questions or just statements?
Either way.
I'm still really upset with the county council. I just can't believe that they would thrust this on municipalities to decide, especially Salt Lake City, when we've just implemented a sales tax increase. And here we are again. To me, I hate to say this, but it was really cowardly of them to do that, to throw it out to the cities. It should have been a county initiative. I mean, the county's going to get money, UTA is going to get money, and so are the cities. So, if the council, I'm in favor of it, but it's a shame to me that we have to do this as a council, as this body, instead of letting the county do it.
Councilmember Luke and then Councilmember Wharton.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Mendenhall and Rogers, for bringing that up. I couldn't agree more. I think that this is an issue that has a big enough impact, not just on residents, but the outcome is so important, not just for residents of Salt Lake City, but for all of Salt Lake County, and for the county council to push this decision off onto cities was, it definitely showed, there was it demonstrated a lack of leadership. While I am very concerned as well about, our constituents and the taxes that we have already voted for and the bond that we're putting on the ballot this fall, I do think that, with this the sales tax option that will be implemented by the county, that in order for us to have a valid seat at the table once this money comes in, if we do not support this, we lose that opportunity. And because we don't really have a direct role on whether or not to pull that funding trigger, that is still up to the county. I'm supportive of the resolution because I do think that we need to claim our seat at that negotiating table with the county, with the Wasatch Front Regional Council as we move forward, because we owe that to our residents who will be paying this tax regardless of what we do today. So I will be supporting this resolution.
Councilmember Wharton and then Councilmember Kitchen.
Yeah, this was a really difficult decision for me for the same reasons, because I think that we made such a strong and concerted effort to reach out on the sales tax that the City Council passed. And because of the way this legislation was written and passed and the time in which it was passed, doesn't allow us to even do that. To even do more than just reaching out, via our own social media or talking about it at county councils. But, people have not had an opportunity to understand that this is coming and to give feedback to us. And I hope they understand that because of the way that the legislation was structured, that that's not something that we had any control over. I also want to echo the frustration with the Republican members of the county council who prevented this from just being a straight up vote, which is it should have been, and which I think that this was a failed opportunity to lead on this issue. So I will be supporting it, but again, I want to emphasize how disappointing it is that we're not able to get adequate residential or feedback from our residents before doing this, and that we're having to rely on data from previous polls and previous election results that doesn't allow us to take into account the changes that we made earlier this year in passing our own sales tax.
Councilmember Kitchen, then Fowler.
I kind of am frustrated as well, Councilmember Rogers, with the county council, but mostly because the timing sucks. This is politics, and we could never predict how they were going to decide to administer this, and we never could have imagined what SB 136 with the language would have suggested. So I'm not that frustrated with their action, but it just sucks that the timing happened right as we're about to pull the trigger on this tax, right? So I'm frustrated only because of that, but I'll be supporting this because I look to my most recent election in 2015, which is when Prop 1 was on the ballot, and Salt Lake City supported it by and large. And so our residents do see this as an important investment, and they want these resources to be invested in transit. And so I'll be supporting it because of that. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I really do echo a lot of what's been said by my other council members. That said, Andrew, thanks for sitting right there and just taking this. This is certainly not directed at you. And really the information you provided for us when we had the briefing on this helped me kind of come around to, clearly we understand how important this is and how much this is needed for our city and our county. My district certainly voted in favor of Prop 1. We pulled the numbers and my district was in favor, but it is frustrating not being able to go back to our residents and say, we've done all of these other things to you. Are you still okay with this? That said, I hope that the county will really do what it is intended to do and make sure that these dollars, particularly in the first couple of years when we as individual cities aren't seeing much of this money, spread the love and hopefully give some of that love to us as well, but really make some strides in creating some good solutions for the county, but hopefully also that we reap some of those benefits as well as we go forward with this. And I'm in support of it. We talked about this via text, and I think when that I've come around, and I know that this was, the process itself was a bit frustrating, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, we have to make really tough decisions, and we have to have this to get things done. So I'm just sort of echoing all of that from my council members, co-council members.
Thanks, Councilmember Fowler. Councilmember Johnston?
Sure. So the question that keeps coming up is, for the first couple of years, I think back to Charlie's point about being a seat at the table, that makes some sense. But after that, it's not. I mean, this is UTA, and the city get the lion's share, and the county gets 5%, I believe, if I remember right.
0.05.
0.05, and we get 0.1 for each of the UTA in the city.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's the question in my head has been, I support it because there are very few things that we can use taxes for that can make life more affordable, which is a major issue. And that's what it comes down to for me. But as far as getting a seat at the table, I don't know that that applies after the first couple of years. Am I wrong? Help me understand this, because the major concern about growth, and we talk about downtown growth, but we're talking about southwest part of the valley particularly, that could use this and more money for regionally significant transportation projects. And I get really concerned about that, our investment benefiting that, and we all benefit, I get it. It concerns me about it going there. And I know that we can't answer that, and you can't answer that. But that's a major concern for me. And even being at the table, as Charlie's talked about, it doesn't give me much sort of
Just to clarify,
comfort.
Madam Chair, if the council adopts this tonight, the county will have exclusive control over the tax fund until July 1, 2019.
9 months.
Yes.
Yep.
So after that, that's when the split starts.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. The first year is 9 months. I mean, that's not irrelevant, but long term, that's not the deal. Long term, we'd have that. So whether we pass it or not, the county passes it or doesn't pass it, that's the question people keep asking me is, why won't you just wait? If they pass it, and we get it. If they don't, then 2 years from now, potentially we could get it anyway if we vote for it.
Andrew, before you respond, which I want to give you a chance to respond, Councilmember Luke.
Yeah, Andrew, that is a very good point, because really the one time that we do have to have direct interaction on the county's choices will be during that, through 2021. Is that right?
No, 2019, July 1, 2019.
July 2019. So we only have 1 year, essentially where this matters. Having dealt with UTA for a long time, not just my time here, I don't want to say that they're vindictive, but their memories are long. And I think that when we talk about different projects and when we talk about transit projects in particular that are prioritized, it will not be lost on them who voted for this and who supported it and who did not. So while we won't be able to negotiate directly with the county pulling this trigger is still going, our residents will still end up paying for it. But if we don't support it, then we can't hold that out as a good, as a reminder to UDOT and to UTA that Salt Lake County, or Salt Lake City stuck our neck out when Salt Lake County wasn't able to. And as projects are coming forward, we expect both departments and the county to keep that in mind. And I think it's imperative for us that we do that. No one else is going to be doing that. But if we don't use that as a reminder, then that's our own fault on this. So
Andrew Gruber and then Councilmember Wharton.
Thank you, members of the council. Again, Andrew Gruber with the Wasatch Front Regional Council. Just briefly to your point, Councilmember Johnson, the first 9 months of revenue would go all to the county, and the county has indicated that they would want to have a process that engages the local communities and the cities in deciding how to utilize those funds. Thereafter, as you noted, the majority of the funds would go directly to the city and then to UTA. But for the funds that go to UTA and to the county, both UTA and the county to this point have said that it is their intention to work with the local communities to determine what the priorities are for the use of those monies, and that is something that happens indefinitely. And so I would just generally say that having the city be engaged in dialogue with the county and with UTA on an ongoing basis will be important to make sure that the Salt Lake City's priorities are heard and are addressed.
Madam Chair, let's send a copy of our transit master plan to the county so they know it, that we have one passed and we're ready to implement.
Did you get that, staff?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Russell. Councilmember Wharton, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I hope that the council, that the county council will look at cities who choose not to support this, and that they'll hold them at those words that by not adopting this resolution, they're saying that they don't have transit needs. They're saying that they don't feel, or if they do have transit needs, they don't feel that this adequately resolves them. So I sincerely hope that that these resolutions have actual meaning for the cities that support this tax and say we recognize we do have these transit needs. We recognize that it's not just our city, but that our city in particular recognizes the transit needs of this valley.
That leaves me, and I won't, there's no big surprises here. I'm going to support this tonight. I think that the pavement condition survey that Salt Lake City completed is some of the most current and relevant analytics in terms of a city understanding what our needs are in the whole state. And we know that even despite our sales tax increase, and even despite the general obligation bond potential for $87 million over 20 years, we still aren't actually meeting the need, the full real need for our streets in Salt Lake City. And the opportunity for us to have an ongoing revenue stream that goes beyond a general obligation bond's lifespan even is something that I think we would be remiss to pass up. I also think we have an opportunity to address our financial expectations with UTA through our interlocal agreement that we will undertake with them when we fund expansion of our transit system through our sales tax option that we did. And in terms of their ongoing dollars, I think there's conversation still to be had there. And I also appreciate Councilmember Johnston's point of this being one of the few ways that we can directly affect the affordability of living in Salt Lake City. Transit is one of those. So I'll be in support of this tonight, and I think the pavement condition survey is the foundation that my decision stands on. Any other discussion on this one, council members? Anybody feel like taking a straw poll? I think we all expressed that already through our comments. All those who intend to vote in favor of this resolution tonight, give me a thumbs up. And that's...
Look at my face.
It's a grouchy, serious, unanimous? Thoughtful, unanimous?
Side eye. Thumbs up with a side eye.
Andrew Gruber, we kept you through all of that. Thank you for bringing us good information as we consider this option and helping us contextualize it with all the other funding streams that we are grappling with. So I hope you can go home now feeling like your work here is done for tonight.
I'm always happy to be here with you and provide any information that I can to you and to Salt Lake City. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, I'm gonna
and
leave.
thanks, Andrew Gruber, and thank you, Russell Weeks. We have a tentative Northwest Quadrant follow-up discussion, but I don't believe we have any items. We just had that as a placeholder. And so we will move on to the end of our meeting tonight. Before our formal meeting, the report and announcements from the executive director. And I think we've got a little packet in our folder tonight.
Yes. Of course, my computer's suddenly frozen. Okay, a couple of sister city items. There is a delegation of students each year sent from Matsumoto. Gwen Springmeyer is the lead of that group. And they always put together a few opportunities for the students to interact with council members. They will, let's see, it looks like they will be coming to be briefed at the chamber 8:45 Sunday, July 22nd. And the chair has agreed to be there to meet them. They always come directly from the airport.
They're
which
tired.
is really the poor
Oh.
kids, you know. And then they have to chat with us. But there are several other opportunities here. One is their graduation dinner. Each council member and a guest would be invited to that. So we'll need to hear back from you on which of those you would like to attend. So that's not directly related to the city's formal sister city program, but the students are from the same city. Then you have the delegation of the Matsumoto dignitaries that are coming in celebration of the 60th anniversary of the sister city. And we have the names of the people who will be here. This, I should thank the administration. This is the first time we've ever had these names more than a minute before we meet them. So this is fabulous. So there's a meet and greet breakfast on the 23rd of July, a reception and banquet on the 23rd in the evening, and then they will be at the Days of 47 parade, and then a farewell dinner. So those, again, you'll be invited to join.
Can I chime in? I unfortunately will be out of town in Denver the Monday through Thursday that these events are happening on, and it is such a cool opportunity. I really encourage you all to do what you can to participate and sing karaoke with Charlie at the banquet as this happened last time. Oh, well, council members, someone needs to sing Islands in the Stream. Anyway, I encourage you guys to participate and represent us all with our sister city of 60 years.
Okay. Then there's some follow-up information about dog off-leash areas. The council had asked about this during one of the budget conversations, and so this, I think it's more that you would just look at this at your leisure and see if you have any questions. Jan Aramaki is the person on our council staff who's the contact, and Lisa Schaefer, it's her department.
I have questions about that.
Okay.
My question is, Rosewood Park was supposed to have a off-leash dog park as well for a pilot project, and I don't know if it ever went through or not, and why the reasoning that did not go through. I don't see Lisa here, but we can follow up and ask that.
Yes, we will. Thank you. Okay. All right, that's it.
Chair, Vice Chair don't have any announcements, and we do have a closed session. That's a question mark, folks. Can't remember. We've already done that one. Okay. Okay, with that, we're going to break for an hour and 5 minutes. I know. We'll just chalk up this efficient last day of the budget to this awesome council this year. Good job, guys. We've got an hour for dinner, and we'll be back across the hall at 7 o'clock to approve our budget, et cetera.